We'll call the meeting to order. It's Tuesday, June 22nd of 2021. This is the Stoughton City Council, and the first order of business is the roll call. Can you help me out with that, Jamie?
Okay, Caravello.
Here.
Doom.
Here.
Hiley.
Here.
Okay. Hirsch.
Here.
Hunt.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
Legaki.
Here.
Majewski.
Present.
Reeves.
Here.
Schumacher.
Here.
Tukalski.
Here.
And Venegas.
Here.
Okay, all alders are present.
Nicely done. Don't get too good at it. All right, minutes and reports are in the packet. That takes us to public comment. And there's nobody signed up to speak tonight. So that takes us to communications. Are there any communications from alders?
I do. I guess I would like to thank the CACP committee for being part of the Juneteenth celebration. They did a great job, and I want to give them a shout out for their work and involvement in that.
All right, any other communications?
Yeah, Tim, just a quick note, if I could. A friend of ours, Bill Leivik, passed away. He was a reporter for the Hub for many years. I don't know if too many of you knew him, but I got to know him quite well. He'd retired and moved up north and has been living the life up there, and passed away from an apparent heart attack.
Thank you, Greg. Any other communications?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Alderperson Hunt.
Much more minor manner than Greg's item, but the Tree Commission is giving away 40 free trees this year, and we still have a number of them available. So if you know anyone that needs a free tree, please contact the Tree Commission, and you can get one as long as it's private property. We're not allowed to put them on public property. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other communications? All right, I have a few. Brush collection starts on June 28th. So just a reminder, if you can put your brush out on the terrace. I always like to try to remind people of that for Brett. And it's a great service that we've been providing for many years. And there'll be 2 more yet this year. We go every other month. Next item is the fair is coming up between now and the next council meeting. And I think I mentioned at the last council meeting that we are partnering with the fair and the Chamber of Commerce to do the fireworks on the 4th of July. The fireworks will be shot off on the RDA site. So there'll be plenty of good locations to view the fireworks this year. And then one last item, Attorney Dragney is working on fine tuning an update for our meeting policy to include the hybrid. We do allow electronically, but we wanted to tidy up the language a little bit. And I expect that that'll be handed off to Attorney Schneider, who is planning on being present at the next CACP meeting the first week in July. So I'm hoping that we can get that to council, and then maybe if the council wants to move forward by the second meeting in July, we can go hybrid. System seems to be working great. So appreciate the help from the IT department to make that happen. One last time for communications. Are there any communications? All right, hearing none, we'll go into our agenda. The first item is the consent agenda. There's a few items in there. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'd move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Jensen, a second by Schumacher. Would anybody like anything acted on separately from the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. We have some new business. R90 of 2021 comes from Public Safety. And that would be Alderperson Jensen.
Yeah, if you could bring that up for me, I'll be happy to read that.
Here, ooh. Not really. Let me just scroll up to it here.
Yep.
There we go.
There we go. This is Resolution 90, 2021. This is authorizing and directing the proper city officials to approve a temporary Class B retailer's license and special event license to the Stoughton Chamber of Commerce for Coffee Days Festival. And I move for approval.
Second.
And a second by Alderperson Reeves. Alderperson Jensen.
Okay, well, we don't have the chief. He's not here, so we can't talk about it. And Holly's not here. He can't talk about it. So it's all up to me. You gotta, obviously Coffee Days Festival, something that's been going on for a number of years now. If I remember correctly, we've not had any issues with it. And I believe that Holly said when we addressed this that everything was in order. And I'm not sure if Callie is here from the chamber. If she is, I'm sure that she would be able to answer any questions.
Kelly is here. Is there anything you want to highlight tonight, Kelly?
No highlights. I just want to say thank you for looking at this. I'm excited to present the Coffee Break Festival again this year. And it's proposed as per normal fashion and activities going back to 2019 and before. So nothing new from what you guys have known in the past prior to COVID years. So thank you.
All right. Are there any questions from alders? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. All right, next item is discussion and possible action regarding entering into an agreement for land division improvements for Nordic Ridge Phase 4. And it looks like this one went through the committee. Alderperson Schumacher.
All right, so this is clearly the Nordic Ridge Phase 4 part of this. This was part of the larger master development agreement that was agreed upon back in 2009. Developer is ready to move into the fourth phase of that, and then per that agreement, we look at each phase as it's opened up and look at the agreements within that. So this is just to get them ready to get constructing in that Phase 4 section, which is on the map that you can see.
All
I
right.
think that's
So I guess I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Go ahead. Second.
All right, perfect.
There's a motion and a second by Alderperson Reeves. Any questions on this one? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? All right, that motion does carry. Next item next group of items are coming from the Plan Commission. First two are first readings. Alderperson Caravello.
Yes, thank you. As you said, this is a first reading, and this is ordinance 15 of 2021, an ordinance amending the zoning classification of certain lands within the 51 West development. And this is a request by 51 West LLC, as we know, is Bob Dvorak, for approval to rezone lots, the lot 7 through 15, 19 through 23, and outlots 1 through 7 within the 51 West neighborhood.
All right. Anything you want to add?
That's just, these are all currently zoned rural holding, so it's basically moving them into zoning of single family, 2-family, and institutional for park and stormwater uses.
And you can kind of see on the map, it's consistent with what we've been talking about for several months now. Are there any questions from alders? Okay, if anything comes up between now and the next meeting, if you want to just let us know, we'll be happy to give you the answers. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next one, which is ordinance 16. Alderperson Caravello, this is also a first reading.
Yep, first reading ordinance 16, 2021, approving a general development plan for certain lands within the 51 West development. And this is a request, again, by 51 West LLC as Bob Dvorak for approval of a general development plan for lots 1 through 6 and lot 16 through 18 within the 51 West neighborhood, and essentially, again, changing their zoning from rural holding into planned development and 2-family and multi-family, and also planned business for the lots 16 and 17.
All right. Is there anything we should add to Attorney Dragney?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Is if you go through the packet, you'll see the explanations of really everything that has gone through. And I know Attorney Dragney and Michael Stacy and then Rodney Shield work with the developers to put all this together. So if this one would also be back at the next meeting, and it's consistent with what we've been reviewing the past several months. Any thoughts on this one?
Mayor, quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
Lot 17, that what's labeled the box store, a big red building on the map. Apologize for my dogs, they're concerned as well. That has the potential to be a box store or other, correct? It's not locked in as a box store, but we do see it as some type of retail, is that correct?
Yeah, I would say at this point, I would call it a placeholder, and I know looks like Bob Dvorak's on the call. If you have anything you want to add to that, Bob.
Lot 17, that's basically a concept plan we've been working with from day one to create our stormwater requirements for runoff. And at this time, we have no real placeholder. That lot 17 could be split up in a number of different ways depending on interest as this moves forward.
Yeah, I think when I said placeholder, I just meant it's there. And there is some flexibility, I guess, on what that might be. But at this point, you don't have anything specific, do you?
No, we do not.
Does that answer your question, Alderperson Lagaki?
Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions? All right, then we'll move on to the next one, which is also from the Planning Commission. And this one, Alderperson Caravello, this is a resolution. So here's the resolution is up on the screen.
Yep, this is Resolution 91 of 2021, approving an extraterritorial jurisdictional certified survey map request by Dave Rysop, my apologies, for property located at 1907 Barber Drive, Town of Dunn, Dane County, Wisconsin, and I so move.
Second.
Did I hear a second?
You did.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Anything you want to add to this one, Alderperson Caravello?
This is just a request, again, within our extraterritorial jurisdictional boundary, to combine properties at this address, 1907 Barber Drive, to eliminate setback issues, to allow construction of a shed on the combined property.
All right, are there any questions or comments on this one? Hearing none, all in favor of the resolution, say aye.
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 And any opposed? None opposed. That motion does carry. Thank you. And the next one came out of Finance Committee earlier this evening for good reason, and we'll explain that to you as we go through it. Alderperson Schumacher.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Resolution R92 2021, resolution to commit to the riverfront pedestrian bridge and riverwalk improvements should the land water conservation grant not come to fruition. So moved.
Second.
And a second by Alderperson Doom. Alderperson Schumacher.
All right, so in order to construct the pedestrian bridge and the few other riverbank restoration and a few other projects that are listed further down in the materials, we're stuck kind of between a difficult place between two grants, the WEDC grant for 500,000 and a DNR grant for 138,000. And the bigger of the grants has a spend period through the end of this year, but we would like to extend that into 2022. But the DNR grant doesn't want us to wait that long, or they want us to wait until we have more assurances before we sign on to do any of the bridge construction. So in order to placate the WEDC, we would get this sort of resolution of commitment that we intend to build the bridge in the 22 time frame, so that we can get them to agree to extend that date out into the end of 2022. Is that all super confusing?
Anything you want to add, Director Friedel?
Yeah, this is kind of like Alder Schumacher said, we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here with these two grants. We requested extension from WEDC, which our expenditure period is up 12/31 of this year. We haven't bid out the bridge work or anything at this point yet, which is why this is kind of time sensitive at this point, because we're kind of crossing into that drop dead date of getting the bid package out and getting this work started. But WEDC came back and said, well, we understand that you've been tentatively awarded this $138,000 federal grant, but for reasons beyond our control, namely the switchover in presidential administration, they haven't officially awarded it to us. Now we have documentation officially saying they've tentatively awarded it, but we haven't signed any grant agreements. And as part of that DNR grant that flows down from the federal level, they've said, don't enter into any agreements related to this project until you have a signed grant agreement. And in speaking with WEDC to get the extension through 12/31/22 to take advantage of the big grant, the $500,000 grant, they said, you know what, we'd feel a lot better if you just committed to doing this project just in case the $138,000 grant falls through for some reason. Now, we have no reason to believe that will happen. It's just been delayed through the red tape of the federal government at this point. We have all the documentation saying that it's been tentatively awarded. Worst case scenario is the federal grant falls through and we have to fund that next year, which we've already budgeted for it. We've done a declaration of intent and everything. We can kind of work through the whole budget process and the CIP as we work through this. Or the other option is to not do this resolution and try to bid this package out and get the bridge work moving, which in that case, then you're guaranteed to lose the $138,000 because you've started construction and agreed to contracts before we've been awarded the grant agreement. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation if we don't do this. We'll have another crack at this once we see the amendment come back from WEDC. Obviously, I don't want to sign anything if they come back and say, if you don't actually complete the work in 2022, you owe us this amount of money or something like that. So I'm curious to see what the actual amendment agreement looks like based on this resolution, if they even tie this into the agreement, or if they're just really trying to get that warm and fuzzy that the council is aware this situation is happening and committed to moving forward in one way, shape, or form, but not really tying us to it in the actual amendment itself. So this is kind of the first step of getting that amendment in our hands, and once that comes through, we'll bring it back through for approval.
All right. Any questions or comments on this one?
Mr. Mayor?
I have Alderperson Hunt and then Lagaki.
If I understand correctly, the Strand Corporation wants us to present the project for bids. Would we just then delay signing anything until we hear on the $138,000 grant?
I believe that process would move pretty quickly, and that's kind of why we're under the time crunch. If we don't move this resolution forward and we don't get the extension from WEDC, Strand really needs to pull the trigger on getting out the bid documents. Now that would kind of flow through the normal process like your street projects do. But I think at the point that we've received the bids and have to move forward with signing a contract, if that DNR grant isn't finalized by the time that happens, then we lose out on that DNR grant.
Okay. How much time do you think would transpire between issuing the request for bids and having to sign something?
I don't think that process takes very long, and I know Strand, they've obviously been working on this for a while, so they're ready to go with the bid package. It's just a matter of getting it out there. So it would probably be a pretty quick turnaround, all things considered. I can't say for sure what it would be, but I'd say probably within a month or two, probably realistically a month and a half, you'd have something back in terms of bids, depending on the timeline. And then they want to kind of shoot for like a September, October start at best. So.
Thank you.
Alderperson Lagaki.
Damon, just verifying that I understood that if we were not to get any of these grants and we go forward with this bridge, this would be budgeted in the CIP budgeting process this year. So we'd be borrowing for it. Is that correct?
The 138 would be the max. The $500,000 we're awarded that. We already have it. It's been hanging out there for a while. We've already had to ask for one extension, and that's why WEDC is a little bit more strict with this go around on it. But the max would be the $138,000, and yes, we'd have to work through that process. Now we have some excess funds within our construction funds that could at least cash flow this. when we draft the actual declarations of intent that we do every year, we max those out. So we're allowed to borrow for it and reimburse ourselves already. We just don't want to have to do that. And again, we have no reason to believe that $138,000 won't come to fruition, but you know, you never know until it's in your hands with the federal government. So.
All right, are there any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. All right, next item is R93 of 2021. And this one is coming from utilities, and I think that's Alderperson Hiley, is that correct?
I think it's me, Venegas.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, then we'll give it to you, and then after that one, we're gonna do item 14. We'll do the two utility ones together.
Okay. This is resolution number R93, 2021, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to approve the Stoughton Utilities 2020 wastewater treatment facility and sanitary sewer collection system compliance maintenance annual report. I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'll say.
All right, Alderperson Hunt, I heard for the second. Alderperson Venegas, did you want to elaborate?
I think it's pretty straightforward. I do believe we have someone from utilities on tonight if they would like to add anything.
Thank you. I'm not really sure how much detail you guys want to go into this report, but basically it's a report card is kind of the best way to look at it. It's an annual report that we take a look at a number of parameters that takes a look at basically how well is the plant operating, our collection system, our staffing, our training, looks at a number of parameters. And I don't know if it's possible, but in the packet there was the page, I think 29 of that section. Kind of goes through the report card of that. Yeah, you can actually kind of go to, I think, third to the last sheet. And I'm happy to go through this in greater detail, but I think this kind of highlights what DNR sees as important, as well as the parameters that we look at. Did also want to report with us is that we did today get back our plant inspection report from the DNR, and they, that was actually fantastic. They went through the report and went through the plant and did a report on it, and we came back with no material issues whatsoever there. So we're very happy with that. I think it's one more page down. Yeah, I think you're on page 7. Sorry about this. I think it's 29 of that packet section of the 31. The reason for bringing this forward every year is to really understand kind of how the plant is operating, like I said, how the collection system is doing, but to recognize if we've got a problem. If there's issues going on, what those issues are and what needs to be done to address those. So if you see here, the first item is influent, and this is an interesting item. Typically in this area, we get a D. We usually do very, very well on this report, but this item we typically don't do very well because we have a lot of I&I, so it's clear water coming into the plant. There's two things that made this better for 2020. One, we've had a drier year in 20 than we did in 19, and years prior to that, we've been kind of in a cycle of really wet years. Obviously, this year's been very dry. I'm sure we'll do better this year if this year continues that way. So in this area, we've got a B. The next 4 items basically looks at how well is the plant operating. So we've got biochemical oxygen demand, total suspended solids, ammonia. Ammonia is actually a new requirement for our permit this year. So this is an item that we hadn't reported out previously, but will be going forward, and phosphorus. And all these areas, the plant is doing fantastic. Even when we have those times where we've had very wet years, where we're bringing in a lot of water, a lot of waste that we're addressing, we're able to do that very effectively at the plant. And so we always get A's in these areas. Biosolids is basically the sludge that comes from the plant and how we're land applying that and how we're doing that and the ways in which we do that. We actually check with the fields that we're going to, see what their nutrient levels are, and then apply accordingly. So we got an A in that as well. For staffing and preventive maintenance, it's basically our staffing levels and how well we're maintaining the plant and the collection system. And in that area, we got an A as well. Our operator certifications, the trainings that are going on, we're actually very fortunate, very lucky in the fact that we have actually 4 wastewater, actually 5, excuse me, wastewater certified operators at the plant and in our water division. And so we got an A in that area. And then financial, that actually looks at a number of things, and we always rely on Jamin and his team in this area. But besides having obviously financial wherewithal and being financially healthy, we also have to maintain a fund. So if there's an emergency things that occur at the plant, that we've got monies available to address those. And then also looking at the collection system. And unlike the influent, where that can be where we've got some areas where we have groundwater coming into our collection system, this is more related to maintenance. So we're getting out, we're flushing our lines, we're televising them, and we know the conditions that they're in, and then we're planning accordingly for CIP improvements going forward. So last year, we actually got a 3.76, and this year we're at a 3.92 on our report card as far as how the overall wastewater treatment plant and collection system is operating at this point for 2020. Anybody have questions or want to drill into any of that in more detail?
Jill, I have a question for you, if you're willing to hear it.
Yeah, of course.
The when you're doing the organics contents as well as some of the other elemental, the metals and such in there, are those samples do you test those, are those in-house tests, or do those get sent out to a third party and for third party analysis?
That's an excellent question. We actually just recently, we had been doing all those tests in-house, except for we have a wet test, what we have to do annually. And basically we have a test where we send, and that one we do at a lab, we send that out. They have Daphnia, so these little basically mini fish, and how long they can survive in our waste stream is a test that's taken for, kind of how effective our treatment is. That's done annually. We've always sent that out. Our mercury testing, we've always sent that out as well. Just recently, though, starting in May, we've actually started to send out all of our certified lab testing to an outside firm. But previously, we had done all those in-house. We do still do some internal in-house testing just to kind of get a feel or gauge as far as how the plant is operating. But going forward, it's more cost-effective to actually send out those samples and have them done, and then to continue to maintain the lab at the level that we need to be able to be certified.
Okay, thanks. I was impressed with actually the heavy metals load was really low. So good job.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a hats off to the wastewater division. They do an amazing job. It's a lot for them to undertake. There's a lot of maintenance that happens. We have ongoing, just with the amount of pumps that we've got there, and they're extremely good at what they do.
And then deriving out of the report in here, I wasn't I don't know if I saw it in there exactly. What do you feel that the plant is operating? What percent capacity do you feel it's operating at? And do any of the new development neighborhoods threaten that level?
I would say we're operating well within our parameters. Now, that is one of the things that we seem to get more, that raises a level of concern. The way that our permit was originally written is, and that's why we typically get a D in the influent areas, is we are exceeding in that area when we have those wetter years. And as we continue to do improvements in our collection system, that will reduce down as well. We are exceeding that. The plant itself, though, is shown to be able to be operating at a level beyond that, and that's why we have such good treatment. So we needed to expand that permit and go back to DNR. We could do that. We've talked to them a number of times. At this point in time, they don't see the value in doing that. But as far as those developments that are coming on board, we would be happy to take on a very large water user as well as send us the waste, and we can handle that very, very well at this point in time. So bring in the wet industries.
All right. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. So we'll skip to item number 14, which is R95. Alderperson Venegas.
All right.
I'm sorry, that one came from finance. Alderperson Schumacher.
Okay. R95 of 2021, a resolution declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from proceeds of borrowing. We looked at this, so moved. We'll talk about it in a minute.
Second.
Second by Doom. Okay. Go ahead, Alderperson Schumacher.
All right, we talked about this one in finance earlier today, and this is ultimately, we're just covering all the bases with this because we had a resolution 39 earlier this year in March that covers this whole business, but in one of the applications, the template wasn't quite right. So this is sort of to cover all of those bases, just in case the DNR or DOA don't have, or they don't like how we presented the information to them originally. And this is to be reimbursed from the Safe Drinking Water Loan.
All right. Anything you want to add, Jill or Jamin?
Nope, that's about it. This is really just a formality and it came up late last week. We believe we're okay with the original declaration, but the engineers that are throwing the application together, which is due on June 30th, which is why we're trying to rush this through. They kind of wanted the more warm and fuzzy of having this particular template in our back pocket and passed by the council. We think we can fall back on the original resolution, but just in case the DNR or DOA comes back and says, well, you didn't quite follow the template to the T or to the letter, we at least have this that we can send off to them as well. So it is really just a bit of a formality. We're comfortable with the original resolution, but because this is a pretty high dollar amount, and we don't want any surprises on the back end, we're asking to push this through tonight just so we have it in case.
All right. Any questions or comments? Alderperson Legaki.
It looks like, Jamin and Brett and all those involved, it looks like these 5 points, these sections, you guys thought it wise to spell these things out to be in better compliance with this report. And the beginning of it looks a little different from the one that we passed as well. And that's my one question. Is this supplemental or is it replacing? It sounds like it's supplemental and you may use it if it's asked for. Is that right, Jamin?
Yeah, the reason we listed this as supplemental is so we could fall back on the March 23rd date, because the way declarations of intent work is they're effective 60 days prior to the date of passage. So we decided that kind of using this as supplemental, we could still fall back on that March 23rd date and not have to fall back on this date. Now, either way, we think we're okay because we haven't seen a lot of costs come through for this project. But again, for all intents and purposes, we believe the DNR and DOA will accept the first resolution, even though some of the wording is a little different. But again, the intent is still there. We're going to front the money and we're asking for reimbursement back through the Safe Drinking Water Loan. And they just want to, the DNR and DOA just want to make sure that council was aware that that's the approach we're taking.
Thank you, Jamin. And then just quickly, no change in monies, nothing at all. This is stating the same amounts that were passed in March. There's nothing new on the dollar amounts or the impact, correct?
Correct. And this amount is ridiculously high, and we do that by design. This includes the private side as well, which we will not be having to borrow for. This amount will come in closer to the $2.5 million range. But again, when you do these, you aim high just in case.
Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. All right, next item is R94 2021, and this one comes from CACP, Alderperson Hiley.
All right, this is forming an ad hoc sustainability committee for the city. It would consist of 2 common council members and 7 to 9 community members. As a committee, we decided this was a good number because this is an issue where there is a lot of public interest right now, and for the foreseeable future. And this is an issue where there's a lot of work to be done. We felt as CACP that we were a little bit, we weren't able to engage with these issues, and engage with sustainable strategies as much as we'd like to in our 1 meeting per month, so that we decided this would be a good way to go forward. So I will move to approve this.
Second.
A second by Alderperson Reeves. Anything else you want to add, Alderperson Hiley?
Item 15, I really intended to go with this when I submitted it. It hasn't gone through committee, but I wanted to have some form of direction available to council in terms of what this committee's work would look like. Most of the work on this was done by former Alder Denise Duranchik, who plans to volunteer for this committee should it pass. So what we could do with this is, if you think it's not in the final form, if you think the overall strategy is not great, we could send it back to committee. We could use this as direction to the ad hoc committee, or we could just have it as advisement for the committee, or we could just do nothing with it. I guess those are our options.
So how would you like to proceed? Did you want to vote on the motion, or are you looking for direction before we do that?
I guess we could have some discussion about I'd like to hear people's initial thoughts, I guess.
On the potential, what I would think would be like group assignments. Is that what we're calling them?
Yeah, I suppose a potential work group allotment, I guess.
What you been doing? Just got it right there.
My initial thoughts, if I may, Mayor.
Sure, go ahead, please.
And I was involved in putting this together, so I already have, kind of thoughts on this, but just would like to share them. And is that I think there's some good examples in the document, but I think by forming the committee, we could ask the sustainability committee that is formed to come back with their priorities, or just kind of give monthly or quarterly updates on whether it's through council or CACP, just to get it formed and get them moving. That's my thoughts.
All right. Did anybody else have any thoughts about them?
Mr. Mayor, I do.
Sure. Alderperson Tukowski was first.
I think these are great to have some of these on paper, things that we've sort of put in the periphery. So I think it's a great start. One thing I noticed, there are some issues there that to some of us might seem cut and dried, and we sort of talk about them informally as if one element is better than another. I'm referring specifically to the cement pavement issue. I guess I would like to see accompanying these really great ideas, a small number of what the group would consider reliable references. For instance, on some issues, you might see a company who has an interest in one or the other publish many articles in favor of their product without exactly saying so. So I think it would really help people to have maybe a base of 3 to 5 references that you feel are a fair, and there's that. And also I thought if you could, it would be helpful maybe to have some key benefits of some of these. Not everyone might be familiar with these issues. So I think that would help in communicating some of those things. And that was it.
Thank you. Is that the kind of feedback you're looking for, Ben?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I think,
Go ahead.
Go
I
ahead.
think
And President Hirsch will be after you.
Can I just say that what I guess the word I was looking for was impartial, at least in terms of what the committee thinks is impartial look at some of these issues.
Go ahead, Alder Hirsch or President Hirsch.
Thank you. First, to address the ad hoc committee, I think it's a great idea, but I really struggle with trying to get 7 to 9 community members. That's, now you're looking at 11 people in a committee. That could be very unwieldy, and also to try to get a quorum. What we've been finding out with a lot of times at the Whitewater Park Steering Committee, there's some people that always show up, and there's some people that are on that committee that never show up. And sometimes we're struggling for a quorum to actually even get started. So I guess I would start smaller and then amend it later, just so you can get it off the ground so meetings can actually occur. That's one recommendation I have. The other one, with respect to your work group direction paper, I think it's a great start, but I really think that's something that the ad hoc committee needs to decide. And I would also encourage you to look at those compared to our council goals, because a lot of those things are going to be working on within our council goals. And the last thing is, because the work group's been working, not only, as Joyce had recommended, they need to have references if they're going to make recommendations to CACP and then on to council with their things. They also need to really look at budgets. Some of the building codes, you will need actually a consultant to work with. So we need to know what kind to, how much that's going to cost the city, because we just can't change building codes. So there's all those types of things that still need to work out. But I think getting it started and letting them maybe kind of figure out what 2 or 3 things they can focus on a year, groups, whether it's land use or the buildings or something, would be good. Especially if they're only meeting once a month, you can't expect that they're going to work on a bunch of things all at once. And the last thing I have to say is, when you're getting community members, are you going to look for specific expertise? because that would really help move this along. If you get people that actually have some experience in different sectors as opposed to just people that want to create change, because then that all would also create that you need more expertise as guest speakers or consultants.
All right, thank you. So I think what I would be looking at obviously is some help in recruiting. We can certainly, post it on our social media and our website to help recruit. But, I think to Regina's point, maybe the last one, you might just say up to 9 community members. That gives you some flexibility to get started until you get a full roster. There might be some preliminary work you can do before you divide up into the work groups. So that would be my suggestion. And then, like I said, the big thing for me is trying to find somebody with the type of expertise that Regina's speaking of. And you may have some people in mind. So I'm hoping you do, because that's one of the challenges is to find people and keep them engaged. And I'm not really sure how often you're planning on meeting. Ben, I don't know if you had any thoughts about that, or who the 2 council members would be.
I don't think we've gotten to that sort of planning. I certainly would want to be part of this myself. But I think that up to 9 community members is a good amendment. So I will make that amendment. So changing and the 7 to 9 to and up to 9 community members.
All right,
Second.
is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by, I think it was Legaki.
Bunch of us, and yes.
All right, any discussion on the amendment?
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Are we just going to be voting on the amendment, or Ben, have we answered the question? Is the guidelines that you propose for the work group tasks, is that a separate question?
Well, we'd just be voting on the amendment for now.
Yeah, right now we're voting on the amendment, and then after that, it'll be on the resolution. And then the other thing I think might be separate. So any questions on the amendment? Hearing none, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 And any opposed? So the amendment carries, so that takes us back to the original motion as amended. So it'll say something like, and up to 9 community members appointed by the mayor. So that's the motion on the floor. Are there any other amendments or comments?
Yeah, Tim, I'm wondering if we shouldn't say appointed by the mayor with council approval.
Yeah, it's fine. It would be confirmed by the council. If that's what you choose to do, we could do that.
Yep, I think it needs to be stated though. Unless the council is comfortable with just you appointing them.
Do you want to make that amendment?
Yeah, I'll make that amendment.
All right.
Second.
Second by Hiley. Any discussion on that amendment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That amendment passes. So it takes us back to the original motion, and it'll say up to 9 community members appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council. Any other questions or amendments?
Mr. Mayor?
Alderperson Hunt, go ahead.
I have a question about the avenue through which the recommendations of the ad hoc committee would travel. I mean, if we're talking about energy use or flora or land use or transportation, all of those items would actually be in the purview of other committees as well. The Tree Commission and Public Works, the Zoning Commission, the Utilities. Would all of those recommendations not be better sent to those committees? I was thinking, like, if we needed to hire someone, wouldn't personnel have a voice in that? So I'm just wondering, what avenue should the recommendations of the ad hoc committee actually follow? Should they go to the other concerned committees?
Could I speak to that for Chief, excuse me, could I speak to that, Tim?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, the way, at least I feel it should be done is this is something that's being created by the CACP, and then it would be a subcommittee or ad hoc committee that would be reporting to us. Once those reports come through the CACP, then the mayor can determine whether it needs to go to any other committee where it could where it would be reviewed or scrutinized as you're talking about, Fred. So I think if we leave it the way it is, it would be able to follow the flow in the proper way. If we find that there's more than one committee, we can always call a special joint committee meeting and have a discussion that way. So I think it needs to have one point of entry into the council of the flow of the council. So, and I'd like to keep it as the CACP.
Yeah, and I would anticipate, updates. I don't know if all the work groups would report at once. Maybe one will be further ahead than others, but certainly, periodic updates to the council would be helpful. It doesn't have to be long presentation, but just to kind of let us know where you're at. And especially if you're looking for direction, or if you have a recommendation that involves finances, then at that point, I think it would be helpful if the council was at least in the loop.
I would agree.
And again, we need to make sure that these new groups are not, we just need to have coordination because, like I said, there's a number of ideas in our council goals that committees are already going to be working on. I would hate to see that this new committee will spend time on something that is already being achieved. And so I guess we need to make sure that there's good coordination and understanding what is currently happening or on the docket to happen in the next year, and to make sure that this new committees or subcommittees actually tackle something that isn't already being looked at.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I think the timing is actually pretty good. I think by the time everybody submits their goals and you get them sorted out, it'll probably take about that long to recruit the community members to be on here and really get them appointed and confirmed anyway. We're probably looking at, I don't know, at least the end of July, if not into August, before all that happens. So I think that things could align if everybody, submits their goals, and then we get, some names in here and get it posted and start recruiting. So that would be my goal, is just to try to not have the committee get ahead of the goals process. I'd like to do them, together, to your point, Regina.
The other thing is looking at some of these items on that list that Denise had sent. What I really would highly discourage is that this new committee adds more time to our staff, because I see a lot of these things that Rodney would have to weigh in, or Jamin. I mean, the last thing I want to do is add more work. This is supposed to take off work, but if they need to constantly be at one of these meetings to give updates of what, is already happening with respect to parking requirements or housing densities and all that kind of stuff, we're not really helping. We're actually creating a heavier workload for our staff, and I would highly discourage that.
Okay, so let's vote on the motion then. Are there any other questions or amendments on it? And then we'll get to the second part.
I have one other question, Tim.
Go ahead.
You were just mentioning goals, that we would be assembling goals. For an ad hoc committee, normally wouldn't we have a predetermined task or a reason for forming the goal, for forming the committee that would have fairly clear goals? Right now, I think what we are saying is we're examining our ecological footprint, but that seems to be very broad to me. And I wonder, how will we measure success? And once we have succeeded, normally an ad hoc committee would disband. So I'm just kind of wondering if we shouldn't have a clearer idea of what the committee is actually trying to achieve, rather than just studying these ideas, so that we could actually determine whether or not we're effectively getting things done. What is our current goal, our stated goal for the committee, I guess, in short?
Well, I think some of that we need to establish. It might be vetted out through the council goals. And certainly we have to know kind of where our starting point is today. And then what I can do is connect either the committee, or I can request information from other municipalities that already have sustainable committees. Some of them actually have sustainable coordinators as staff members in Middleton and Fitchburg, for example. I was on a meeting with both of them a couple days ago. So I think there's going to be some data out there, and it's just a question of whether or not our goals are going to be consistent with other municipalities. But the first thing I think we need to do is at least understand where our starting point is. And then once we do that, then through some education, I think we can determine, realistically what is achievable and maybe a path to get there. So yeah, this resolution looks a little bit, I think it looks a little bit more like our starting point and not as much about the finish point, but I think that this will be the beginning of that journey. So I would trust that the committee will work toward getting us there. I think that's the intent. And Ben or Rachel, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I was hoping to get a few more of the details like you were asking for, Fred, into this resolution, but the general thoughts on the committee were to get it forward and get the ball rolling, get people, and hear their opinions before we try to shape the committee too much.
Okay.
And did you have something to add, Rachel?
Nope, I just agree with what you had said.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments on the motion as amended twice? Or is it 3 times?
Twice.
All right, all in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
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 And any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Also,
Okay. 2 opposed, okay. That motion does carry. That takes us to the final item, which is the discussion possible action on the work groups. And Ben, you want to start this one off? I know we've already had some introduction to it. What were you hoping to get out of this one?
Having heard comments, I think it would be best just to have this, as something the committee could review. and take from it what they will. So I don't know necessarily if we would need to act on it.
Okay. Anybody have any thoughts about this, or especially those that weren't really on board with the resolution? Is there something that you would like to see to make this a better process?
I would say that among all of your questions and goals and thoughts and ideas that you have within your document there on your work groups, if she were willing, Alder Tukolsky would be an excellent resource on getting those very organized and into a flow chart in there. She's really remarkable at putting together a flow chart for things and goals and mission statements.
Sounds like somebody's been volunteered to me.
I'm not volunteering. I'm stating the accolade.
I'm glad Brett thinks that's a plus.
I found them really useful. I mean, even before you were appointed and elected, I found your flow charts and goals and missions on projects to be extremely helpful, because it's very streamlined and very terse, and that was great.
I think he means organized.
All right. Anybody else have any thoughts? Or Alderperson Legaki, go ahead.
So just in looking at this, I think it provides a nice thumbprint for the group to get started as they define where they are. And I'm hoping that they're going to look at other municipalities. But as I read all this, I wondered, well, what was this actual, like, just our own personal brainstorming that came after the CACP meeting, or were other resources used to gather this? And I don't see any referencing. So I think just sort of, this is a potential tool for the committee to get started is what I'd like to see, but I'd also like to sort of see how other sustainability committees are working successfully, and perhaps how they get started. And I think we've referenced those, but yeah, I didn't know if this was all original material or stuff that we had just brainstormed or gathered from somewhere else.
I think a lot of it is brainstorming. And I think a strength of this committee, if we really get it going, is that there would be some capacity to actually do research and find research that gives us something, some evidence that's actionable, that the other committees might not have capacity for.
The other thing, Ben, I'm just thinking, one way to start organized once you get some people on board is actually have guest speakers from the surrounding communities that have such a group, to see how they're structured and how they went about deciding projects or areas to focus on yearly. With our steering committee, we really kind of brainstormed and kind of had a flow chart of the most important things to deal with first, kind of like what are the crucial, and then we found experts to help us think through those items and brought them in as guest speakers, which really help us form and get ideas of how to go forward. So that's just a recommendation.
Gina, was to help us form the Sustainable Stoughton group? Is that who you were referring to?
No, the ad hoc Whitewater Steering Committee group.
Thank you.
And I'm more than happy to, kind of be the bridge to the other communities and try to round up the folks that were involved with their sustainable committee. So that's not a problem. So as we're going through that, that could be one of the things that I do is on my action plan. Any other thoughts about this one tonight? Otherwise, you know, we'll get things posted. If you have some people that are interested and they bring the type of expertise you think we need on this group, please send their names my way. We'll have an application form to fill out like we do the other committees, so we can learn a little bit about them before we make the appointments and the confirmations. Any last thoughts on this one? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Move to adjourn.
All right. I didn't catch it, Shaman, did you? There's like 3 of them. Was there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Bye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Here, everybody.
Thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.